Grace stood silently outside Kevin's luxury apartment. The crowd had dispersed after Daniel walked away. Although Kevin wrapped his arm around her shoulder and assured her everything was fine, Grace couldn't erase the image of Daniel's bruised face from her mind. For the first time since coming to the city, she didn't feel happy. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Daniel's gentle voice. "I only came because I love you." She turned from side to side, but peace refused to come. Kevin noticed her silence. "You're still thinking about that villager," he laughed. Grace forced a smile. "No, I'm just tired." Kevin kissed her forehead. "Forget him." She nodded. But deep inside, she couldn't. The following weeks passed as usual. Kevin continued taking Grace to expensive restaurants. They attended glamorous parties. They spent weekends at luxurious beach resorts. Everywhere they went, people admired them. Grace posted smiling pictures online. Her followers flooded the comments. "You're living the dream. You look like a queen." Goals. Everyone believed she had found true happiness. No one knew. Her heart was slowly becoming empty. One afternoon, while driving back from a business meeting, Kevin received an urgent phone call. "I'll be back in an hour," he told Grace. "I have to meet someone across town." Grace smiled. "I'll be waiting." Kevin climbed into his SUV and drove away. Grace watched him disappear into the busy traffic. She had no idea. It would be the last time she would ever see him alive. Rain began falling heavily that evening. Dark clouds covered the city. Cars moved slowly along the wet highway. Suddenly, a speeding truck lost control while trying to overtake another vehicle. Kevin had no time to react. The truck slammed into his SUV with a deafening crash. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. The road fell silent. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. Kevin died at the scene. Grace waited anxiously inside the apartment. Hours passed. She kept calling Kevin. No answer. Again. No answer. Then, his phone rang one last time. A stranger answered. "Are you related to Mr. Kevin?" Grace's heart froze. "Yes. There has been an accident." The phone slipped from her hand. No. No. This can't be happening. She rushed to the hospital. Doctors lowered their heads. "We're sorry." Grace burst into tears. Everything she had built collapsed in a single moment. The funeral took place 3 days later. Grace stayed quietly at the back. Kevin's wealthy relatives barely acknowledged her. Then, a tall, elegant woman approached. She was Kevin's mother. She looked at Grace with cold eyes. "You." Grace swallowed nervously. "I know who you are. I loved Kevin." The older woman shook her head. "You were never his wife. You have no place here." Grace stood speechless. After the funeral, Kevin's family arrived at the apartment. Lawyers carried documents. Workers began removing furniture. Grace watched in confusion. "What are you doing?" "This apartment belongs to Kevin's estate." "But I live here." "Not anymore." Within hours, everything disappeared. The expensive furniture, the television, the car, the jewelry. Even the designer clothes Kevin had bought were packed away. Grace begged. "Please. I have nowhere to go." Kevin's mother looked at her sadly. "My son made his choices. Now you must live with yours." The apartment door closed behind Grace. She stood outside carrying only one small suitcase. The same suitcase Daniel had lovingly carried to the bus stop. Now, it felt heavier than ever. Grace used the little money left in her purse to rent a cheap room. She hoped to find work quickly, but every office asked the same question. Experience. She had none. Qualifications. Very few. References. None. Days became weeks. Her savings disappeared. Soon, she couldn't pay rent. The landlord knocked on her door. I'm sorry, Grace. If you can't pay, you must leave. She packed her suitcase once again. This time, there was nowhere to go. Life on the streets was nothing like the glamorous city she had dreamed about. She slept on park benches, sometimes beneath shop verandas, sometimes under abandoned buildings. She searched through rubbish bins for leftover food. People walked past her without looking. One evening, she gathered the courage to call the friends who used to party with her. The first phone rang. No answer. The second friend rejected the call. The third blocked her number. Grace stared at her phone. The same people who once called her every weekend had disappeared. She finally understood. Many people enjoy your success. Very few stay during your suffering. One cold morning, Grace sat outside a small church. She hadn't eaten for 2 days. An elderly woman walked over and handed her a loaf of bread. God bless you, the woman said. Grace burst into tears. It wasn't the bread that broke her. It was the kindness. The same kindness Daniel had shown her every day. The kindness she had never appreciated. For the first time, Grace admitted the truth to herself. I made the biggest mistake of my life. She sold her phone, bought a bus ticket, and returned to Kijani Village. The journey felt much longer than before. This time, she wasn't chasing dreams. She was running from regrets. When the bus stopped near the village, Grace stepped onto the dusty road. Everything looked familiar. The mango trees, the narrow footpaths, the little shops, children playing happily. Tears filled her eyes. She slowly walked toward the small mud house she once called home. But something had changed. The leaking roof was gone. Fresh paint covered the walls. New windows had been installed. A beautiful flower garden surrounded the house. Grace smiled through her tears. Daniel, she whispered. She knocked gently. The door opened. Daniel stood there. He looked healthier, more confident. He wore clean work clothes. Behind him stood a kind young woman carrying a baby. Grace immediately understood. Daniel had remarried. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Grace lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. Daniel nodded quietly. I know. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I know. I betrayed you. Daniel remained silent. Tears rolled down Grace's cheeks. I came to ask for your forgiveness. Daniel looked at his new wife. She gently nodded. He turned back toward Grace. I forgave you a long time ago. Grace cried harder. Can we? She couldn't finish the sentence. Daniel understood. No. My life has moved forward. He looked lovingly at the woman beside him. I have a family now. Grace nodded slowly. She had expected the answer, but hearing it still shattered her heart. Daniel stepped forward. I don't hate you. I pray that one day you'll find peace. Grace whispered. Thank you. She turned away, walking slowly down the dusty road. Not because anyone chased her away, but because she finally accepted that some doors, once closed, never open again. Months later, Grace found work at a small village market selling vegetables. The work was difficult. The pay was little. But she no longer complained. Whenever she saw young couples arguing about money, she would quietly tell them, never measure love by wealth. Money can disappear overnight. But genuine love, is priceless. As for Daniel, his life continued to improve. After returning from the city, he had accepted a job with a successful agricultural company. His honesty and hard work earned him promotions. Soon, he was supervising several farms across the region. Although life had finally become comfortable, he never forgot the years of hardship. He remained humble. He continued helping struggling families in the village. The same gentle man he had always been. Grace often saw Daniel from a distance, playing with his children, laughing with his wife, living the peaceful life she had once rejected. She never interrupted them. She simply smiled sadly and walked on, because she had finally learned. Some lessons arrive too late.